Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many years ago, during the 2006 election, one of the most important issues of the day was accountability and transparency. The Liberal government at the time had been implicated in the most severe case of political corruption in modern Canadian history. You may remember this as the sponsorship scandal. I know I remember. For years, Liberal-linked advertising firms with government contracts kept high-profile Liberal organizers on the payroll and generously financed the Liberal Party of Canada, all in return for little or no work, as was later found in the investigation. This operation could be best characterized as a machine, which infected and controlled agencies across the government. The purpose of this machine was to place the resources of the government at the disposal of the Liberal Party of Canada. And after years of Liberal corruption and independent investigations, Canadians had had enough. And in 2006, they elected a Conservative government under Prime Minister Stephen Harper to get to the bottom of things and root out the corruption. We introduced the Accountability Act, an act which dismantled the machine built to abuse taxpayer funds and power for the benefit of the Liberal Party. It also helped ensure that future governments, including a Conservative government, would never again abuse the apparatus of government for the benefit of their political party. This Accountability Act created measures to protect Canada from political corruption. We created the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, the Commissioner of Lobbying, and others to ensure that all future governments were held to account. And I find it quite rich to listen to the speeches of my Liberal colleagues who claim that they respect officers of Parliament and us Conservatives do not, when it was in fact our previous Conservative government, who created these officers of Parliament to clean up the Liberal mess. Not only did Conservatives implement accountability by creating these new officers, we created stiff new political financing rules which limited political donations to individuals, banned corporate and union donations, and capped those donations at just over $1,000. In fact, if Conservatives had not implemented these tough new rules, the Liberal Party would still be holding cash for access fundraisers for thousands of dollars, and Canadians wouldn't even have the right to know about it. And this brings me to the fundamental point of this debate. On one hand, we have Conservatives, our record of holding government to account, even when it is not in the best interests of our own party. And on the other hand, you have the Liberals with Bill C-50, always trying to find ways to avoid playing by the rule and spirit of the law. In fact, this entire bill would be completely unnecessary if Liberals started acting in the way that Canadians expect of their representatives. I mean, no sooner had the Liberal Party regained its former place of power than they set about reconstructing that infamous machine. The machine used to leverage taxpayer funds and power for the benefit of the Liberal Party at the expense of the Canadian people. Ministers began holding fundraisers, a perfectly acceptable and necessary activity for politicians. But these were no ordinary fundraisers held in church basements or Legion halls across the land. No, these were exclusive fundraisers for the ultra-wealthy to pay the Liberal Party for exclusive access to decision-makers. Did these ministers break the law? No, but they showed their true colors. They showed that once given power, they will always leverage every angle to the benefit of their own party at the expense of the interests of Canadians. And that is exactly why people elected Conservatives in 2006, because Conservatives see the opportunity to abuse power, and we make laws to prevent that abuse. The Liberals, on the other hand, see an opportunity to abuse the spirit of the law, and rather than take real action to eliminate that abuse, will go to any lengths to justify it. And that is simply not acceptable, and Canadians deserve better. Bill C-50 is a joke. It is a public relations stunt designed to fool the Canadian people into believing that the Liberal Party has changed. Conservatives know better, and Canadians are not fooled. Let's take into account what this bill intends to implement. All fundraisers where tickets of $200 or over must be advertised prominently on the party's website, together with a list of those in attendance, how much they are required to pay. This provision is simply unenforceable, and it goes to the heart of my argument on why this legislation is a public relations exercise designed to make it appear that the Liberals are doing something about cash for access, while giving them a free hand to continue with these tainted fundraisers. Take, for example, the fact that any political party could host an exclusive fundraiser, a fundraiser at which no funds may be required to attend, but one where the expectation and obligation to donate may be very strong. For example, an exclusive invitation to a group of wealthy business people or lawyers doing work with the Government of Canada would not require the Liberals to disclose the details of the event, including the participants or how much they are required to pay, as long as it's less than $200. But at the event, it could be made easily known that the Liberal Party would appreciate those in attendance to support the party through financial donations. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know, the sad fact is that neither the Accountability Act nor Bill C-50 can prevent parties from engaging in this kind of behavior. No amount of laws, short of having a member of the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner at every political fundraiser, can prevent these activities. The best solution for preventing future abuses of political power for financial gain is for politicians to take a stand and refuse to tolerate cash for access. The public has placed their trust in us and in turn expect nothing but the highest standards of personal and professional accountability and to make decisions that are in the best interests of the people. And I believe Canadians deserve better. And I know, as members of Parliament, that we can do better. And in fact, there was a time not so long ago that the Prime Minister promised Canadians better. He stated in his open and accountable government document the following, I quote, "Ministers and parliamentary secretaries must avoid conflict of interest, the appearance of conflict of interest, and situations that have potential to involve conflict of interest." I continue, "Ministers and parliamentary secretaries must ensure that political fundraising activities or considerations do not affect nor appear to affect the exercise of their official duties and access of individuals or organizations to government." End quote. This is the standard that Canadians want from their representatives. And I am ashamed that our Prime Minister has paid lip service to this and broken yet another promise to Canadians. No longer do we have a government that places priority on ethics when it comes to political financing, but we have a government that places priority on the illusion of ethics. And that is exactly what Bill C-50 intends to create, the illusion that the Liberal Party of Canada has changed in any way from the days of bagmen soliciting funds from those in business with government. It's time to stop the illusion and to give Canadians what they really deserve, accountable government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My honourable colleagues started by hearkening back to 2006. I too can remember 2006. In 2006, we had just signed the Kelowna Accord, which would have led to a much better relationship with Indigenous Canadians across this country. In 2006, we still had the Kyoto Accord, which would have led to greater environmental standards in this country and in tackling climate change around the world. In 2006, we had just signed early learning and childcare agreements with the provinces. In 2006, we had a government that was focused on economic growth in this country. Finally, we have that again after 10 dark years under the Conservative government. In addition to having all those things and a government that is focused on the economy, we have a government that is focused on fundraising in transparent and methodical ways that is allowing communities to understand the process by which political parties undergo to receive funds in order to fight campaigns. Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely ridiculous to me to listen to the Conservatives talk about transparency and not support this bill. Why won't they support it?
Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's eminently clear to me that the Liberal Party would like to do anything else than talk about their ethical violations or their fundraising, cash for access fundraisers. I know that in our party, we don't dangle out our members and say, for $1,500, you can access these top decision makers. That's not what the Conservative Party stands for, not now, not in 2006, and not ever, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? La Députée de Sherbrooke.
The honourable member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy to have an opportunity to ask a question of our new colleague. I wonder if he has anything to say about the government's intentions with this bill, considering the fact that this form of fundraising gives preferential access to senior government, to ministers, in other words, and they're pretending to make the system more transparent, but it will still allow for that kind of preferential access to the high-ups in the Liberal Party. Is it because that works so well as a fundraising option for the Liberals? Because is it something that the Liberals couldn't even imagine getting rid of because it's so useful to them? The honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that question, the only member in this House who's younger than I am, and proud to serve with him here in this House. And I'll say this, that it's very clear to me that Liberals are desperate to hold these cash for access fundraisers, especially considering that the Conservative Party of Canada yet again destroyed them in fundraising this year. And we're not even the government party. We don't even need to dangle out our ministers and sell cash for access. We have Canadians who actually believe in this party and in this party's principles. So we don't need to engage in this sort of cash for access, you pay me something, I give you something. We don't need to engage in that sort of activity. Bill C-50, as I said, it's a public relations exercise. The government got caught with these cash for access fundraisers, but they can't get off. They can't get off of this, and so they need to have this bill to make it appear like they're doing something about it, and Canadians are not fooled.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Portage-Lisker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do very much appreciate my honourable colleague's comments, although the referral to age, I don't really want to hear more about that. I wondered if my honourable colleague could please comment on what's going on currently, whereby the Prime Minister has breached and broken 4 parts of the Conflict of Interest Act, said sorry, but refused to make right the wrong that he's done. Could my honourable colleague talk about, when we think about ethics, we think about honourable behaviour in this place, how the Prime Minister is really disrespecting Canada and Canadian taxpayers' dollars by what he's done?
Honourable member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, I thank my honourable colleague for that very good question. And I think that, it just goes to show that some things don't change. We have a party in government that will use all apparatuses of government, whether it be personal jets or meal allowances or the power of ministers to fundraise and to cover costs for personal pleasure. And Canadians really do expect better of their government, and they expect better of their Prime Minister. I mean, we had over $200,000 on security and jet costs, I perfectly understand, but we had $32,000 on a government jet and over $1,700 on booze and meals, and the Prime Minister needs to pay this money back. It's an illegal vacation. He needs to pay the money back.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Portage.